Glad that you're still here with us on Morning Express. It's now 20 minutes after 8 and it's time for Lifestyle. And today we're looking at relationships, which is what we do on Wednesdays. And well, we've always talked about healthy relationships. I've had that term thrown left, right and center when we talk about healthy relationships. But of course, that would technically assume that if there is a healthy relationship, then there is what we call an unhealthy relationship. And from what I've heard, the term is actually toxic. And well, we'll be finding out what toxic relationships are and what healthy relationships are. And of course, you're very welcome to participate in this conversation. You can do that via Twitter, and that's at Michael G. Gitonga or at Sophia Wanuna. And let me start by introducing our panel this morning. And we have Ken Ouko, who's a sociologist. Welcome, Ken. Good to see you.
Michael.
You've been missing in action, but it's good to have you back.
I'm found.
You're found. And true to what you had said earlier, details of where you've been, that might be scandalous. So
yes.
We'll leave that.
Keep that to the other side.
Okay. We also have Caro Gitari, who's a psychologist. Great having you on board today, Caro.
I've
always been told that we never have a lady in the panel. So finally,
you balance.
Yes, at least we balanced it.
Almost.
Almost, yes. And Chris Hart, who's a relationship expert. And I'll start with you, Chris. What is a healthy relationship? When we talk about a healthy relationship, really, what are we talking about?
Well, you're talking about a relationship where, first of all, people have made a good choice. They've actually got a partner who matches them in lots of characteristics. You're also talking about a relationship where people are fundamentally honest, that they are agreed to live their lives as a team, and they are open with one another. They don't have another agenda. Now, you get a lot of relationships where they start off like that, then they become hollowed out, because maybe they begin to develop different agendas, maybe they begin to focus on their work, dare I say it, on other aspects of their lives. And then you get over right into the really difficult area of the people who don't really want to be in a relationship at all. They're not in it for permanence. They're in it for heaven knows what, but it's short term, and unfortunately they're in a relationship, but they're not treating it as such. Okay. It's not their main priority.
Caro, do you agree that the minute agendas go separate ways and that relationship is due for a clinic? It needs to be checked?
Yes, because as long as you don't have the same priorities, the same goals, the main ones, the same principles, then it means you'll always be differing, right? If your priority is work 24/7 and you never see your wife, you never see your children, then what time do you have to spend together to agree on things? And maybe when you met, you had agreed on a similar set of goals. Then as you're growing together, that changes. Your directions change, and one person is going towards the left and the other to the right. So what happens is you end up getting a lot of arguments, a lot of fights, bad communication, aggressive, aggressive communication. And that means essentially that you cannot relate, you cannot agree. And a number of times that's why we end up seeing couples, because it reaches a point you can't be in the same room and even hear what the other person is saying. You've reached a point of no return unless there's a neutral party there, like to actually translate what is being said. Okay,
assuming that these two come together and at the first point they're actually happy, they're enjoying, possibly they have the same agenda, then it changes down the road. How does one tell that our agendas are now beginning to drift apart? Because I'm sure it happens over time.
You see, when you first meet someone, think about it, when two strangers meet, you're portraying your best self, right? And then it's as you get to know each other, as you become friends and develop a relationship and possibly get married, then you actually see a person's true character, right? A person's true personality. So it could be that at the beginning, it looked like I could meet your needs. And then along the way, when now we've decided we're together forever, you realize this is not the person I married. This is not what I signed up for. This is something totally different. I signed up for commitment, communication, faithfulness. And all of a sudden, I find out this man has been unfaithful, or the woman has been unfaithful, or is drinking the whole night, and you did not know this before you got married. So a number of times, it's that along the way, we display our true selves.
Okay. Ken, is there a way of having this conversation before you get yourself into this mix and find out that you're so deep in you can't get out? Is there a way of having this thrashed out right at the beginning?
You know, relationships are like ladders to the clouds. Yeah, there's nowhere it stops. And when you start climbing up that ladder, the beauty of a relationship is that both of you are climbing up. If one of you remains behind different agenda, like Chris says, and you're doing different things, then maybe you'll have a problem, because you might go too far up, and then you have to like look for the other person to try and lift them, you know, to follow you. But as you climb up this ladder, the measure of a relationship, the beauty of it is the satisfaction you get from each other. Yeah, because nobody else will observe it for you. They'll make their comments, people will say all sorts of things. But as long as the two of you are enjoying it, and the idea of a ladder is that you're improving, you know, not stagnating, not getting worse, then your life is set. But in the process, as you do that, sometimes you might realize the ladder misses a rung somewhere. And maybe you're going to climb it, and then you realize, uh-oh, I can't do this, so somebody else has to do that. The other person in the relationship has to do that for you. And the only way to tell if something is going wrong is when you climb over that rung without the other person's help. Then they end up remaining behind, you know. So you'll always have indicators which are all over. But the problem with quote-unquote falling in love is that you might never see it. That is the problem with falling in love. I think Chris always tells us these things. But sometimes then you realize too late. Yeah, when you should have run for the hills earlier. Yeah, but you realize you're already, you know, like too deep or too high up. And so it becomes very difficult. The signs are always there, you know, especially at the beginning. When you realize after an evening session, when you're driving away, you're thinking, what just happened there? Yeah, so yeah, nothing is making sense to you. Then you're in a bad place.
Yeah. I mean, that's a perfect example of what we were talking about. If you look at bad relationships, you almost invariably find that they were bad from the beginning.
From the beginning, yes.
Right at the outset, the signs were all there. And what was going wrong was basically you weren't paying attention. Perhaps you were feeling a bit insecure, must have a relationship. Any relationship will do. Not a good place to start.
What defines a bad experience in a relationship? Because you may have arguments, you have differing opinions, you'll never be the same. What is it that would click and make me think, well, that is
it's perfectly okay to have arguments in relationships. I mean, two independent, intelligent people will disagree. Right. So they must argue. But they must argue well. But what really is the bad sign is, bluntly, flaky behavior. You know, if you meet somebody right at the beginning when they're supposed to be on their best behavior, and actually they're not very nice. Like, you can't get hold of them, they don't turn up on time, they call off dates at the last minute, you know, they make promises and they don't keep them, they're borrowing small sums of money off you, you know, all the signs that say, this is not really a very good person. And if this person has got a habit of spending 3 nights a week in the bars till 4 a.m., what makes you think that's going to change? Just because you've got a piece of paper from a pastor? You know, it's not going to change. So don't disregard the signs that say, not a good relationship.
I once worked with this couple that had been together for about 9 years. And right at the 9th year, they're realizing they're not good for each other. Now I'm asking, what's been happening? Where have you been? So I asked this guy, tell me about the first dates. And you know, one of the first things he told me is that on their first date, he would remember the date, very unlike men. But he was that particular.
Must have been that horrific.
Yes, and then he says that the first date he had with this woman, she received 8 phone calls, and those 8 she had to step away from the table to go and take them. And part of the problem they had throughout the 9 years was the number of friends this lady had, male friends. So I told him, but it was there for you to see from day one. You know, why didn't you ask? Why do you have to step away to take these phone calls? Why can't you just do them here?
But surely if it's a first date, that might be termed as intruding, you know, into somebody's private.
You know, but that's the point, isn't it? If you're having a first date, there are rules for a first date. And one of the rules is that you pay attention to one another. And if that person is not actually there with you, but they're actually out there with some other social life of theirs, instantly that's saying to you, not a good person. Right at the beginning of a relationship, you should be put off by very small things. Later on, when you've invested a lot of time and effort in one another, it's hard to do that. But right at the beginning, the smallest sign that somebody's a bit weird, don't go any further. It's a waste of time.
In fact, Mike, as Chris is saying, because someone is presenting their best self at the first date, if they're picking 8 phone calls,
yeah, quite.
Then prediction for the next
And
2
the
years,
evidence
because
to
that's
come
the,
in.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the
And
life.
imagine, and that's the first date, because a toxic relationship is a pattern of things. Like you said, it's not one argument or one fight, yeah, but you can see an actual pattern of things. If your partner is controlling from date one, controlling he wants you or she wants you to change your whole self. And you think, it's okay, I can do this because I love this person. That will never change. That narcissistic behavior, it won't change. It will just grow. You know, if a person wants you to change your lifestyle, your hobbies, your friends, even maybe the way you dress, such things, if a person has no respect, from the first few dates, there's even subtle abuse, even though it's emotional, that will just grow. It will never change. It means there's no
If anything,
respect.
it's going to become worse.
It's going to become worse,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
If you can see signs of dishonesty, the borrowing little money
Yeah.
that Chris has said, yeah, from you and not paying back, and you can see that pattern amongst all his or her friends, that will also not change, because there has to be some level of honesty.
Okay. We did mention, and you said, or it is said commonly, that love is blind.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
maybe this might be the reason why some of these things you just refuse to see them.
That is true whenever a relationship starts in a hugely romantic way. You know, if my eyes meet someone across the crowded room, you know, and we fall in love, yeah, we're going to be hyped up with hormones, and love is blind then. All the parts of the brain that make good decisions get shut down. Those hormones are designed to get you in bed. Blow the consequences, you know? It's just about that. It is far, far better to start relationships in the cold light of day, in a work setting, in an environment where you are fundamentally honest, isn't it? You know? Sober, stone cold and sober, and get to know that person as they really are, you know, how they are at work, for example. It's very important as well to know their context, you know, not just to meet them in a flash restaurant for the very first time. You really want to know their friends. You want to know what sort of friends they have. You want to know how they spend their time. And as you build up that picture, you've got to be very wary. You know, somebody who treats you brilliantly, nasty to waiters, has very strange friends. I mean, that's run for the hills stuff.
All right, Ken, Carol has mentioned that one of the signs of a toxic relationship is somebody who's controlling. And maybe they would want you to change. But how do you differentiate between controlling and somebody who's genuinely concerned? Because they may genuinely just not like a certain way, or maybe they're just helping you dress better.
Well, showing care is got its methodologies, and it's very different from controlling someone. You know the idea of dress, for example, when you tell someone, can we meet on Friday? Yes. And then you say 6 p.m. That means they're either coming from work or wherever, and then they show up dressed like they've just come from some club. Yeah, then, you know, those signs are usually very ominous. You know, you look at someone and you're thinking, okay, you're ready for this date, but this is how you turned out, and it's your first date. Yeah? The idea, for example, of phone calls. A phone call is supposed to tell you what kind of a person the other person is. And like he says, when you talk about friends and associates, you can tell from somebody's phone calls, if at all he has to take them or she has to take them, what kind of people they associate with, what kind of conversations they have. But if every time it is something natta, whisper, they have to step away and come back and say, oh, that's another friend of mine. You know, it's really nice if they try to explain, but that explanation ought to be authentic. Yeah, and a lot of times, if also you look at someone and you don't like something about them, believe you me, it's wise to tell them from day one. Because if you hide it, they'll probably amplify that behavior, thinking you're okay with it. Yeah, because you could go somewhere and maybe it's a club you regularly attend, or it's a hotel you regularly go to. Then this one day you show up with this person who's dressed as if they're supposed to be at Florida, not where you're supposed to be. So you just tell them, this is a no-no for here. But you know, if you say, you're looking really nice for the sake of the first date, the next day they'll come in something worse. Yeah, and for you, that's discomfort, pure and simple. And so you have to find a way of, you know, passing on that message. And believe you me, people are very receptive during the first dates. Very, very receptive. The minute I make a comment, they'll take note of it. But if you start making that comment a year later, they're like, why are you like that?
Yeah, why are you saying this now?
Yeah.
Caro, is there a difference between controlling and manipulative? Is that one and the same thing?
Well, almost one and the same thing. Because when you're manipulating someone, what do you seek? To control them, to control their friends, how they spend their money, who they see, what they do, where they work. So in a sense, you may use hints or passive behavior just to try and get your way around. to make sure that you're the one who has the power in the relationship. And a relationship isn't about power. It's not about one-upmanship, who is right and who is wrong. It's
But a lot are.
I know, yeah, that's why they're toxic. It's meant to be mutual agreement, you know, you make mutual decision making. And you know, like I'm following up even on what Ken said, like about the first date, yeah? Start as you mean to go on. If you accept something the very first time you meet someone, how will they know? Because you expect, like as women, many of the times we think, it's okay when I get married to them or they'll change this. Why will they change it? They don't even know that there's a problem with it, you know? As Ken said, you didn't mention it. You acted like it was okay.
But it might sound a bit forward if you mention some things on the first date, because the reaction might be, who do you think you are?
You know,
but the thing is, you don't have to be with that person. You see, a relationship is meant to be like a friendship. Are you friends with everyone in the world just for the sake of being friends?
Of course not.
Exactly.
So
There
you
are
do have
things
to
that make you
choose.
compatible, right? So if you know that this is a no-go area for me, why try to make it work for you when eventually it will end in tears? But mentioning it just makes sure, if, for example, I mention it to Chris and he says, I can't change that, then I know we can't go on. If it's not something I can live with and he can't change it.
I mean,
Exactly.
a really good litmus test for me is that, like she says, start as you mean to go on. So you meet for the very first time and you start talking. And you start telling the truth. Simple things. You don't tell everything, but you tell the truth. Now, if you suddenly discover that they're trying to manipulate that truth, they're giving you a hard time with what you say, very bad sign. If you get the sensation that they are not telling you the truth, or they're editing it and they're not telling you certain things, instant bad sign. If the relationship starts off on the basis of openness and truth, and you are learning things that make you say, that's nice, I like that, then you're going to have a successful, at least, friendship. But if you get the sense that actually you're only seeing a small portion of them, or that they are already beginning to edit what you say to them, then it's a very bad sign.
Okay. And Caro, how does one now ensure, or what is it that keeps people in toxic relationships? Because you'll find there are people who constantly will even tell you, I cannot stand this guy, but they never seem to move on.
You're always getting something out of it. There are always some hidden perks, even in a toxic relationship. For example, if this is the one person who knows how to manipulate you, because when you're about to walk out the door, he'll take you on a dream holiday, then you may stay with him. There's appearances because of society, right? You want to be Mrs. So-and-so, so it's easier to stay in that relationship because you got married to him, you didn't want to turn 30 before you got married. So now you have to stick with it. You were told by your parents and by everyone else, you make your bed, you lie in it. So you stick with it because you think this is what I'm meant to be doing. I'm meant to keep to this. Or this is the person who props you up.
Yes.
Even though they treat you badly, they prop you up. This is the only person who gives you compliments, you know, on how you look or what you're doing. So you think, it's okay, it's likely to change. Maybe it's just me, there's something wrong with me. And bottom line, if all you've known, even from your childhood, is dysfunctional relationships, maybe you've grown up with dysfunctional parents, then that's all you know. You don't know anything else. So you think that what you're going through, the relationship you have, is actually normal. Yeah, you don't even know that this is toxic or wrong.
There's another important facet too. Everybody thinks that leaving a relationship is an event, a decision, an act. It's not, it's a process. And if you don't start that process, you can't leave. So, for example, you return home from A&E and you're swearing to everybody that you're going to be you'll have left home by tomorrow. And you might even leave, but you'll be back the day after because you've not gone through the process. When you step outside the relationship, suddenly all the things she's talking about are not there anymore, and it's a desert. You're alone, you're empty. So you go back. If you want to leave a relationship, it takes weeks or months to think through all the steps along the way. And as you do that, gradually you're able to leave. And if you don't start that process, you never leave.
Okay, Ken, how does one begin that process? Because just like Carol said, there are those perks that you enjoy, and they just may be social perks, which you don't want to face. For instance, it may be a societal thing that you're married and I cannot be divorced, you know, despite the fact that you've realized that this relationship is just not working. What's the procedure? What are those steps that Ken is talking about, that you Chris is talking about, that you need to begin so that you don't have to come back when you've made that decision to leave?
You know, self-evaluation is where it all starts. You have to be a little selfish in terms of thinking about yourself. What are you getting out of this relationship versus what could you be missing if you left? And most times, like both of them say, the toxic relationship has some silver lining somewhere. You know, there's something that other people are not seeing that you see. Yeah, sometimes it's in the kitchen, sometimes it's in the bedroom, but everything about the personality and behavior out here is totally messed up. But you will stay in it, and when you finally want to make that decision, you know, part of the problem people have is walking away. You just walk away. Then you start thinking, man, I miss that person, or whatever it is that you are missing from that person. But if you plan it, I don't know how Chris thinks about. It's like a business, you know, like, okay, now I want to close down this business. I need to sell off this stock and then do a day. But sometimes for a relationship, it might not work like that. Because this person, you're with them every day. You see them every other day of your life. And when you want to leave, you sometimes think, what happens after I leave? Yeah, so you start that process, but there are so many ifs and buts. But I think the only way to do it is to take stock of yourself as a person. Because if you're not getting what you want from a relationship, believe you me, whether it's business, whether it's academics, whatever it is you're doing, if you're not extracting maximum profit from it, walk on. That process has to start with yourself. And once you talk to either a specialist, a professional, or you talk to your pastor or your friend, yeah, then you give them that intent. And once you show the intention, believe you me, if it's your mother or your friend or somebody who cares, they'll encourage you and show you a way. Yeah, it's usually very, very difficult as a person just to wake up and say, I've had it, I'm walking away.
It is, it's impossible. Yeah. You can more or less guarantee that if a relationship suddenly blows up in front of you, a couple you know, they suddenly split up, you can absolutely guarantee that one of them was going through the process for months and they were just not talking about it. And it includes, as he says, you start by thinking about yourself, but you then, some of what you do is business. Some of it is about thinking, where am I going to live? Do I need to get a new job? Some of it is about reconfiguring your social life. Where am I going to hang out? I need to re-energize a lot of old friendships. I need to develop friendships that don't see me as part of a couple, so that I can actually go and be with them and not feel empty because my partner's not there. A lot of it is about, what am I going to tell people? What am I going to say to my family? The social pressure that will come to go back in. How am I going to counter that? How am I going to say to my family, look, I know you think he's lovely, but, you know, you've got to think through that. You're going to have to think about children. What do I say to the children? How do I manage the children after the separation? How am I going to go through the process of agreeing with my partner that we are good parents, even though we are separated? How do I avoid a toxic custody battle? How do I start the process of disentangling our finances without a monumental fight? All of this,
like almost a conversation you have with yourself, and you decide, you know what, it's okay, I think I can stay.
Well, some people do, but starting that process, it often has a sort of paradoxical effect. Sometimes it convinces you're making a mistake. Sometimes it paves the way and you eventually are separated. Sometimes the very fact that you're doing it makes you walk a little taller, makes you a little more independent, and your partner begins to perceive that even though you don't say a word. And they suddenly begin to have the thought in their head, maybe this person won't always be here. If I don't behave better, maybe I'll be on my own. And so suddenly they've got a motivation to start talking to you. So sometimes starting the process rescues the relationship.
Okay. Cara, are there other signs of a toxic relationship, and especially the subtle ones? I mean, there are those obvious ones. If a man or a woman is beating you up, I mean, really, there's nothing there to discuss. But there are those subtle things that happen in a relationship, and you're not quite sure. You think they're actually out of love.
If you feel you're losing yourself, you know, that's really subtle. Like day by day, you feel, I'm not the person, not just change, because we are dynamic. Like Ken said, even relationships are dynamic, so change is good. But if you feel like you're no longer the person you were, you're empty. Even when you're with your partner, your husband, your boyfriend,
you're lonely.
The time you spend together, it's completely empty. You get nothing out of it. You actually feel better when you're not with them, you know? You actually feel at peace when the person is away,
Yes.
when he goes for business trips.
It's a very good
Then of
sign.
course that's not healthy unless you're going through. Arguments are okay, but if this is 90% of your relationship, you know, there is no communication.
In
You
fact,
communicate about the children and school
that's
fees.
exactly right. This empty communication where basically you're just doing the diary, you take the kids today,
Yeah.
I'll do them tomorrow. If that's all you talk about, essentially you've got a real problem. There are some other signs you've got to watch for. If your conversation has started to become critical, in other words, most of what you say to one another has got a critical edge to it. Instead of saying, please will you take the trash out, you say to your wife, you never take the trash out. Or worse still, you stupid what's it, you never take the trash out. Very strong sign that things are going wrong. If you're beginning to, every argument degenerates into defensiveness. It's not an argument about how to solve the problem, it's why you're wrong and I'm right. You know? If it goes that way, signs are very bad. And of course the real final sign that things are going over the edge is that people stop talking altogether. People start
Silence,
walking round one another. They stop bringing subjects up. If something comes up, they just clam up.
Ignore it.
All right, Ken,
Hide it under the
all
carpet.
these are signs which probably, like we've said, are subtle and they come over a period of time. But some are redeemable. There are some which can be, you know, talked about and hopefully the relationship redeemed. But how does one tell that you've reached that point where this is no longer for redeeming, but it's for me to make a decision and, you know, walk out?
You know, the need for escape, usually that feeling is very overbearing in one's mind. When you know you're having a problem, it's something even at work. When your boss is on your case every day, the best you do never looks any good, then you feel like you need to change jobs. That's exactly the same thing with the relationship, that if you're not deriving maximum satisfaction from each other, and you keep asking yourself, what am I doing here? Then that's your first step. Yeah, but then again, if you have an issue with the other person over everything, including taking the trash out. Then, because those are things you could just do if you're in love. You say, oh, she never takes the trash out, let me do it.
It's okay.
Yeah, but once the love starts going out, you start thinking,
Everything
stupid,
is a problem.
why are you not taking the trash out? Yeah, so once you have that stage in your life, believe you me, the subtle and the magnified ones will be the same. It's up to you to make that decision and say, I need to walk on. Walking on is pretty difficult. Like Chris always says, it's impossible, in fact. You can't just wake up and say, I'm gone. Yeah, you have to think through these things. And then when you finally agree with yourself that I'm going to do this, of course you inform the significant others, people near you. But you always have that issue of somebody coming to tell you, you know, the explanation syndrome. Why are you leaving? You know, what's going to happen to the children? What's going to happen to your self-esteem? And, you know, all these things. Because if it's a bad person, they'll probably also want to show you that I'm better off without you. And that's the rebounding thing we talked about it a week or so ago. But I think each one of us has that onus. You have to be able to make that decision. And when you do it, you've got to get very strong social support systems around you. Because if you're on your own, which is one of the signs of a bad relationship, when you're on your own. Because everybody you go to says, you guys, me, I've had enough of the two of you. You know, so then you start realizing you're actually solo. So you have a problem. But if you always have guys who you can run to and say, oh, let me talk to him, because yesterday he came and told me such good things about you. Then even you get taken aback and you know, you wait for that chance to flourish again. Yeah, but the minute you realize everybody doesn't want anything to do with you, it means they saw it long before you.
Long before you saw it. Okay, there's a lady here by the name Jennifer here via Twitter who says that she's been in a relationship for the last 15 years. For 4 years now, she's felt it's a wrong relationship, but how can she possibly walk away after investing in it for that long? Carol.
It would be important to know.
I think that's one of the things that one wonders after 15 years, really, can I go back to the market where
start afresh?
What do I do?
People are often very afraid of that.
It's true.
So Carol, how would she, you know, walk out? Where does she start from?
Okay, first of all, it's usually very important to know, like, why does she think the relationship is wrong? Because there are many times anything that becomes monotonous becomes boring. You know, we want the allure of what is new and shiny, yeah? So there is that. You can be stuck in a rut and you're not necessarily in a toxic relationship, but then there are these other signs we're talking about. Like when she says, this relationship is wrong, has there been any of those things we've talked about? Has there been verbal abuse? Are they just not friends anymore, not communicating? Because once she gets to that point, then she can start a self-evaluation of what's going wrong, you know. Has she taken any steps to figure out what's going wrong? Have they tried? Because the first step for any relationship, even when you're friends and you have a conflict, what do? Talk about it, resolve it. So if they've reached the point they can't resolve mini conflicts together, and now they've blown up, there's nothing they talk about, then it's probably time to see someone, you know. A relationship expert, yes, because now you need an external party to even help communicate for the both of you, because anything you say is misconstrued.
And you know, a lot of what goes on in relationships are founded on skills. Some people develop those skills in relationship, like how to resolve difficult issues. And what often happens in relationships is things get into a very bad state. Now, it would be very tempting to just walk out. But if you go to see a professional, there's a very strong chance that the professional will see what the issue is. You bear in mind that a professional sees thousands of couples. You are unique. You only see your problem. You think your problem is very weird. But no, your counsellor will have seen that problem 5 times that week. And they know the patterns, and they know what to suggest. And it's absolutely staggering the number of times you see a couple in front of you where one of them suddenly, you see the light bulb go off. Doing, I know what's going wrong in this relationship now. And they go home and they start doing something different. When you start doing something different, things start to change. You remember that wonderful thing about, you know, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something to change.
Different results.
Yeah, well, that's what happens in relationships. Every argument follows the same path. You need somebody to say, have you thought about arguing about this like this? And when that happens, suddenly the rules start to change.
Okay.
You know, Michael, relationships are like religion. We actually thrive on hope. Yeah, and you keep hoping for the best. And that's why some people come and tell you, oh, your man is such a mess. But you say, no. Sometimes he's down, but yeah, he's going to get better. You know, and the same way you're told in religion that when things are bad, pray like your life depends on it. We do that every day with the relationships. We are not kneel down and pray, but you know, you keep hoping for the best out of somebody else. And that's the essence of loving someone. You give them that opportunity to become better, and you keep hoping and hoping and hoping. Sometimes, again, like in relationships, like with religion, you could go fasting, you could do, you know, all those things we do, we make offerings and do stuff. So one day you come home with gifts and you tell this person who you were fighting with yesterday that, you know, I thought of you during the day, and this is the product of my thought. Things get better for a week, you know, so you keep hoping that something good will come out of it. Eventually, we hope for Canaan, you know, the land of milk and honey. All of us hope for that. Yeah, and so sometimes when it doesn't work, then now the pastors and the priests come in and start praying for you, thinking, uh-oh, something is bad here. But by then it's too late, you know, you're stuck with each other. 15 years, like for that lady, can be painful because you're thinking, especially if you're a woman, that's the prime of your life. Yeah, you've spent 15 years with someone. So it's not just monetary investment. You're talking about physical, emotional, and all those things. And it gets very scary to walk away.
Okay, as we wind up, Carol, rule of thumb when it comes to a relationship, what are some of the things that you must look out for at the beginning of the relationship so that you don't end up with the 15-year-old investment which you don't want to let go, and at the same time it's not doing you any good?
Okay, whenever you meet someone who you're dating or who you want to probably marry, ask yourself, how do I feel when I'm with this person? Does this person make me feel better? Does this person make me want to be a better person? Or do I leave there feeling criticized, you know, feeling discouraged? Yeah. Number 2, how do we communicate? If whenever we're together, we're on our phones or tablets, we have nothing in common. Yeah. So we meet and we ask, how was your day? And there's nothing to talk about, then what are you doing there? Yeah. Number 3, why are you entering the relationship? Because, for example, if you're entering a relationship because you're turning 30 or all your friends are married or there's outside pressure, trust me, you will marry the first person who comes along. Yeah. So ask yourself, what are your expectations realistically? What principles am I not likely to change? For example, religion. Because if that is already in the way, when you meet someone, there's no point of wasting your time. If you know there's some areas, I cannot marry a smoker, I don't expect him to stop smoking, you know, so know which are the no-go areas for me. Any form of abuse is a no-no. You see, physical is easy to see, verbal is not, and it's probably worse because it destroys your self-esteem, it corrodes you, you stop being the person you are. So any person who constantly puts you down, you know, makes you look like they're the better person, there's nothing you do right. then there's no way you're spending a lifetime with that person. Jealousy, another really bad one. Yes, the insecurities. I mean, there's the normal one, a little jealousy, but yeah, the point of they've gone through, they've put in things in your phone to spy on you, or you know, you have someone following you constantly. You're not allowed to talk to any male person, even if it's a colleague at the office.
Even parts of your family.
Exactly, then that's a no-go area.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ken Ouko, who is a sociologist. We also have Carol Gitare, who is a psychologist, and Chris Hart, who's a relationship expert. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great.
Suddenly my chair has disappeared.
Thank you so much for watching the show. It was a great one. I love the discussion. Those deal breakers, is true. You see them from the get-go, and it's desperation that makes you ignore or imagine you can change or things will change.
And I think as human beings, we have a lot of hope. So you always imagine that they will change, they will improve, I can change them.
The most important thing is to be happy with yourself and know that this life, if it means you go through it alone, why are your things falling?
It's just the end of the show. This is how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, that's how the cookie crumbles. It's like tired. That earpiece is like, Lord, I've been working
next
for 3
my
hours.
microphone might fall off. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so point is, you know, be happy, enjoy yourself, find great friends, family that make you feel good about whatever your situation in life is. When that great person comes, like your wife, you know, you're married and happy, right?
No, I'm very happy.
I know you are very happy. So thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching and keeping us company. We'll see you tomorrow, bright and early, right here on Morning Express. Have a good day.
All right, bye.